Hey YouTube, Cityside75 here. Welcome back to another video. I hope everyone had a good holiday. And I did have a good holiday as well. And I wanted to show you what I got this holiday season. It's not exactly new, but these are relics of Christmases past and some of my original video games that have actually not been part of my collection here at my house until now. And these were the games that I grew up playing and the systems that I grew up playing, so I thought I'd give you a quick look at them here. So let's go ahead and take a look. So as you probably have guessed by now, this is an Intellivision setup here. And I was an Intellivision kid growing up. Actually, just about everybody in my neighborhood had an Intellivision at one time or another, and we were among the first. And I'd like to believe that, you know, people saw our Intellivision and saw, you know, what I still believe was the superior level of, you know, graphics and gameplay compared to the Atari, and they were all impressed by it. Actually, as the story goes, when my parents were purchasing the family gift in 1980, which was going to be an Atari, we had walked into this stereo store just after my dad had put it in the car. And there, sitting in the stereo store, was like a side-by-side demo of the Intellivision and the Atari. And the Atari was playing Space Invaders, and the Intellivision was playing Space Battle. And we all sat there and watched, and were just floored by the Intellivision, especially in Space Battle. If you're familiar with that game, it has these awesome, like, screen-flashing explosions, and it just looked like so much better than the Atari. So my parents ran out to the car, brought the Atari back in, returned it, and paid another $100 extra for the Intellivision. And again, keep in mind, this was $300, this exact unit right here, when we bought it in 1980. And that's a lot of money even now, but back then that was a lot of money. So this thing lasted me from 1980 until 1984. And I think it still probably works, but there was some problem with it. I forget exactly what the problem was. So it was eventually replaced by this Intellivision 2, which I got Christmas of 1984. So this was Christmas of 1980, and it was like a family gift, and just so thrilling. Man, I mean, these were just some great times, you know, sitting around all day in your pajamas and playing video games. And so then, yeah, and then it was replaced in 1984 by this Intellivision 2 here. You can probably see very dusty Timex Sinclair 1000 back there, or ZX81 for those of you on the other side of the ocean. So in addition to these, I also brought home most of my games. I realized once I got here that my IntelliVoice was not in the bundle, so I'm going to have to go back for that, because I actually have all 4 IntelliVoice games. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the games here. I do plan on doing some videos about some of these other games. If you've browsed my other videos on the channel, you see that I've done a video for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I played that game a ton years ago, but I played that on a pretty beat up Intellivision system that I had here. And now that I've got my Intellivision 2 that works great, although one of the controllers apparently is having a problem at the moment. It's not responding, which is kind of disappointing, but I guess it can always be replaced with the removable controllers of the Intellivision 2. Anyway, back to the games. So like I was saying, I have all 4 of the IntelliVoice games. B-17 Bomber is definitely my favorite. I think that the thing with a lot of Intellivision games is that there's a handful of good videos out there and good YouTubers that cover Intellivision pretty well, but I still think there's a lot of ignorance out there about how most of these games are played, because people didn't have Intellivision growing up. A lot of people didn't, at least, and especially now with these you know, younger kids getting into video games these days, they just, you know, these games were not the type of games that were, it was readily apparent what you had to do in the games. So I think games like B-17 Bomber get kind of a short shaft, if you will. I'm not sure if that's what I mean to say, but short end of the stick in terms of appreciating the quality that those games are. So I may be making some videos about some of these games as well. Let's just keep moving across here, and I'll tell you about some of these others. Sub Hunt there, the second one from the bottom. That's an excellent game. Very deep game. A game I think that most people don't, again, really appreciate how deep and interesting of a game Sub Hunt is. Moving across, NFL football. We spent many hours playing that game. We have the playbooks here. And my dad actually laminated these playbooks because we used them so much that he could see that they were not going to last real long. So they laminated them. And these things have stood the test of time thanks to that laminating. Here's the other one. Yeah, so we played that game to death. And I would challenge anyone to a game of NFL football on the Intellivision. I think I could take on just about anybody in that. Moving on, here we got Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Treasure of Tarman. Not nearly as good as the original, but also not nearly as well known, and it's actually a 3D maze game, which obviously was quite ahead of its time when it came out, even though I think it would be debatable if you could really call that game fun, but that's a different story for another video. Moving across here to the next aisle, we've got Night Stalker, one of my favorites growing up. Space Armada, which is a Space Invaders ripoff, but has, again, some really surprising depth to it that I think deserves a little bit more of a look on YouTube at some point. Mission X, that's a really fun bomber game, sort of like 1942, slightly, not very similar, but I guess that's the closest you'd call it to. In this aisle, or this row here, we've got Vectron, a kind of a complicated arcade game. Not the best, but later in the Intellivision's lifespan, the original Mattel version of Intellivision, and it had some pretty decent graphics for the time. Finally, in this last row here, Bomb Squad and Tron Solar Sailor, two more of the Intellivoice games. Las Vegas Poker and Blackjack, which was the pack-in for this system. Then we got some Imagic games here. I loved the Imagic games for the Intellivision because they made them, unlike Activision, Imagic made their games completely different on every platform. And they took advantage of what each system could do, like Demon Attack, for example. That's a great game on the Atari, but it's completely different on the Intellivision and has actually a boss stage. And Microsurgeon, what an incredibly complex undertaking it was to try to make Microsurgeon. Again, it's questionable how fun the game is. It's fun, but it just gets a little repetitive after a while. But what an interesting concept to take on, and you'd never see him take something like that on in the Atari. Safecracker, I would argue that there are slight elements of this game that make it maybe the oldest precursor to Grand Theft Auto out there. And again, I do want to make a video about this game too. You actually do have a city to drive around in, and you can shoot other cars, blow them up, and have the police come chasing you through the city. It's all in there. Not quite as exciting as Grand Theft Auto, but it's all in there. Beauty and the Beast, and it's kind of a Donkey Kong ripoff, but it has one awesome feature, which again I want to show in a future video. Just one thing that they programmed into it that just is genius. Nova Blast, a Defender clone that so-so. And then finally we got the Parker Brothers games in the front here, Frogger and Qbert, my Activision games there. And then here in the very front row here we've got Blockade Runner. Now this is again a really cool Intellivision game that I don't see often discussed. This game really has a lot of depth to it, and it's got a pretty exciting audio visual experience to it as well. So this is a really good game. This Defender is a quality port of the arcade, really very complete actually. Especially compared to the meager Atari 2600 version. The infamous Coleco Donkey Kong, which doesn't even work on the Intellivision 2 and it isn't worth it anyway. And then finally Bump and Jump. What an awesome arcade game. And again, this was near the end of when I was playing the Intellivision full time, was when Bump and Jump came out, probably about 83 or 84. But again, really well done arcade port and a lot of fun to play. So anyway, just wanted to share this with you. I'm excited to finally have this back in my collection, and figured I would share it with my friends on YouTube. Like I said before, the Arcade Chronicles is on hold for a little bit because the garage is just a little too cold to be spending too much time out there. I've got a couple videos left to add to the Arcade Chronicles, but I think I may move on and do some Intellivision videos for a little bit here. Just going into some of the lesser known Intellivision games that I think deserve a little bit more of a look. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll give you a quick shot of my video game cabinet here. It's kind of a mess right now, but see if you can recognize some of the consoles that we got there. And there's more stacked behind those. Believe it or not, most everything on this shelf can be turned on fairly quickly and hooked up fairly quickly. I've got a kind of complex wiring system back there. So anyway, not really the point of this video. I wanted to show you my Intellivision. Thanks for watching. See you soon.